Hi, I'm Christy. I want to talk to you today about renewing and exiting out of 504s and IEPs for students. For 504s, technically they need to be reviewed periodically. So we recommend that you do it annually because things can change, and it's just a good time to make sure that everything is current and that it's still meeting your students' needs. If you don't do it annually, it's likely that it'll be done about every 3 years. Now, if any adjustments are needed, or especially if there's any major changes, I do recommend that you do it more frequently. And it would be a good idea to look over the whole IEP plan in general and make sure that everything is current and that it is meeting your students' needs. For IEPs, legally they need to be renewed annually before they expire. So the process means that you will get prior notice as to time and place, and you'll be given the opportunity for input. The teachers and therapists will do tests and evaluations to get current levels, see if anything's changed, see where they've changed. The meeting should run typically like I talked about in the previous video. And then again, if you agree with everything, sign and you're good to go for another year. About every 3 years, they do a more in-depth review where they do more in-depth testing, but the process is pretty similar to what we've talked about before. I do tend to get an extra report when they do these 3-year ones, and it just goes into more details on what the results of all the testing and evaluations that they've done. As far as exiting goes, the short answer is that by the end of high school, your student will be exited from both their 504 and their IEP. 504s do technically end with high school, but colleges and universities are required to provide accommodations. So you can check with your college or university and see what you need to do to get something in place for them. As far as IEPs go, they do end with high school, although there are a few post-secondary programs that will allow a student to stay until their 22nd birthday. And if that's the case, then they would remain in the school district, and so the process would remain the same as what they've done up till now. It is possible to exit before they graduate from high school. This is usually if sufficient progress is made and they no longer need accommodations or modifications. And so at that point, they would be functioning at a near typical level and would be able to succeed in school without either their IEP or their 504. And so the decision would be made to exit them. And the only other thing to keep in mind would be that they look at things from an educational perspective. So if there are issues that affect life but don't affect the school day, then they probably aren't going to be considered. If you disagree with exiting, it is possible for you to advocate for your student and explain why, and you can go through the process. I was able to do this with my younger son. He has an IEP for speech, and they wanted to exit him because he was doing so well. And I said, I see what you're saying, and I agree with you today, but with his issues, they tend to come and go, especially over breaks. And so I'm concerned that over Christmas break or over summer break especially, his issues may come back. And they said, we see what you're saying. Okay, we're going to downgrade his services, but we'll continue on. And so we've been able to do things that way. I do have a blog post on these issues and one that lists a whole bunch of resources. I would love for you to check it out at www.havenofhopeforme.com. I believe they were posted in June and into July of 2017. I'm so glad you were able to make it through this process, and I hope that you were successful and that you were able to agree with me and say that life is good and there is never a dull moment.